The night was quiet across the Pacific Ocean, but beneath the calm waters, something vast and ancient stirred a vibration so deep that sonar buoys across miles of sea began screaming alarms. The signals were unlike anything modern science had ever recorded, and yet the rhythm felt alive as though a heart larger than mountains had begun to beat again. Deep under the crust of the earth for centuries, legends whispered of forgotten giants, gods of war buried in silence, until the day mankind pushed too far, and that day seemed to arrive when the first tremors rolled through the ocean floor. Ships stationed near the Mariana Trench reported that the water rose unnaturally in long, steady waves, not from a storm, not from an earthquake, but from something moving under the seabed. The commanders on those ships stared at their monitors in disbelief. Shapes of impossible size formed on their radar outlines that looked like cities shifting slowly, as if waking from a long slumber. Satellites orbiting above captured faint pulses glowing through cracks in the ocean like molten fire. Each pulse carried energy levels equal to nuclear blasts, yet spread evenly as if controlled, as if breathing global command centers across the world buzzed. With panic, scientists argued it was an anomaly, a volcanic chain reaction. Others claimed it was a military weapon test. But one old historian inside the Pentagon whispered a different name, a name pulled from a text no one had dared to open for. 100 years, he said, these were the silent war gods, the first destroyers of Earth. They were not myths, not symbols. They were real engines of judgment older than humanity itself, built by unknown hands, and buried when the last age ended. His voice shook when he said the line, "When the silent war gods open their eyes, the world will burn." The words spread quickly through halls of power. Leaders demanded answers. Could this be alien? Could this be ancient human technology? But no answer was enough. When people began to disappear, fishermen near the Pacific simply gone. Their radios carried last words, static-filled screams followed by silence. One survivor was pulled from the water, his skin burned black by unknown radiation, his eyes wide with terror. He repeated the same sentence over and over, "The god has opened its eye." The President of the United States ordered an emergency meeting. Jets, scrambled fleets deployed. But the truth was too large to fight. One machine was stirring beneath the ocean, and if the legends were true, there were more. The Sahara Desert, the Antarctic ice shelves, the Andes Mountains, each hiding another eye. Another god. Scientists searched old star maps and discovered something unsettling. The pattern of the buried machines matched constellations from a sky that existed 12,000 years ago, when humans were still scattered tribes. Someone had placed them deliberately aligned to stars long forgotten. But the alignment was not random. It was a countdown, one that ended this year. The fear reached living rooms across America as news networks interrupted broadcasts with shaky footage. An entire U.S. Navy destroyer tilted and sank in moments, swallowed by a whirlpool of black water crew members screamed. Over radios then cut off radar screens showed nothing. The ocean swallowed everything. Yet the black box recorders later revealed one chilling sound before silence. A deep metallic groan echoing through the sea like a giant turning in its sleep. When this information leaked, panic grew. Streets filled with protests and prayers, cities lit with fear. People shouted the end was here, while scientists worked day and night, decoding what little data they had. One young researcher uncovered something. Buried within an ancient tablet stored in Nevada, it spoke of a battle long before history, written by hands that should not have known such machines. It described how the first humans fought alongside something called the Sentinel, a weapon born of both flesh and metal that nearly destroyed itself to push the war gods back underground. The tablet ended with a warning, "Never wake them again, for they do not forgive governments." Dismissed the myth, but soldiers whispered about it in secret. They asked, what if the machines were never defeated, only lulled into sleep, and what if human progress, weapons, wars, pollution had finally stirred them awake? As night fell again, the ocean trembled louder. The water glowed faint red like blood veins. Pulsing under the surface and in the darkness, a colossal shadow rolled the size of a mountain, but shaped not like rock, but like a head, and two burning lights opened under the waves, eyes larger than cities flooding the sea with crimson fire. The First Silent War. God had opened its eyes. The ocean was still glowing red when the U.S. Navy sent its fleet closer to the disturbance, but they never returned. The last transmission came in the form of a single desperate line, a voice cracking through. Static saying the God has opened its eye, then silence, no radar, no distress beacon, no wreckage on the surface, only black water rolling with unnatural waves. Families waited for news, but nothing came. Panic swept through military channels and across. The world people began asking questions. How could an entire fleet vanish in seconds? Scientists demanded data, but satellites caught only flashes of light deep under the Pacific, like enormous pulses timed and deliberate, not random like nature. The Pentagon locked down all information, but secrets do not stay hidden long when a video leaked online, showing a final few seconds of the fleet, a giant shadow beneath the ships, a shape so large it dwarfed the destroyers, then a sudden flash before. The recording went dead. The world erupted into fear. Meanwhile, across the deserts of North Africa, something else stirred beneath the Sahara. The ground began to quake in steady rhythm, as though something deep below tapped against the crust. Archaeologists, stationed near ancient ruins, were the first to see carvings glowing faint gold under the sand symbols that had not shone for thousands of years. They formed patterns, spirals of war machines drawn like gods crushing cities and humans bowing before them. The carvings pulsed in time with the vibrations from below, and then entire slabs of desert shifted, as though the land itself was breathing. A storm of sand rose into the sky. Satellites confirmed that something massive was buried just beneath. The dunes, stretching for miles like bones of a titan, waiting to rise, chaos spread across global broadcasts. One anchor in New York barely finished saying, "We are seeing seismic activity in North Africa," when the live feed broke into static, then returned with trembling camera footage of sand collapsing downward like a sinkhole, and in the pit, a colossal metallic curve emerged like a shoulder plates of armor covered in desert dust, but glowing lines ran across it like veins of fire. The people watching screamed as the machine slowly tilted its head, and for a moment, even through the sandstorm, its eye opened and glowed white, brighter than the sun. 1 city away, glass shattered only from the light. People fell to their knees, blinded. Governments tried to calm the world, but the truth was unavoidable. These were no myths, no stories from ancient times. They were here, and they were rising across continents. Fear grew inside every military command. Humans had no weapon to match such. Machines, nothing on Earth could match their size or their energy. One general shouted in frustration in a closed meeting, "We are ants before giants' ants cannot fight gods." But one scientist dared to speak against the silence. She revealed something. Hidden in a Nevada archive, writings stored from before recorded history, the first humans faced these same machines once, and somehow survived. The records called them war gods, and described how they nearly burned the earth, but humanity fought back. With help from an entity known only as the Sentinel, she explained it was not just a machine, but a living weapon built from human and alien knowledge together, one that sacrificed itself to put the war gods back to sleep. The generals laughed at the story, but when she revealed an image from the archive, silence filled the room because the Sentinel was real. Once it had stood between mankind and extinction, its ruins lay beneath a mountain in Alaska, dismantled by fear. Long ago, she argued, that the Sentinel must be rebuilt and awakened again. If the war gods were truly rising, no other hope remained, but time was running out, while leaders debated what to do. Satellites captured a terrifying sight in the Sahara. The massive machine was No longer still, it was standing, its enormous body half buried, but its arms rising higher than skyscrapers, each movement shaking the ground for hundreds of miles across the desert. Thunder rolled, though there were no clouds. The machine turned its massive head and pointed its glowing eye north. The trajectory lined perfectly with the city of New York. News spread like wildfire, social feeds filled with screaming voices. Some prayed, some demanded answers, others fled. Chaos reached airports, highways, oceans of people moving as though escape was possible. Yet where could they run? There was no corner of earth untouched by fear. The story returned to the first survivor pulled from the Pacific, still lying in a hospital bed, burned and broken. His eyes glassy with terror, he finally whispered more than one line. This time he said, "They are not waking by accident. They are answering a call. Someone or something has summoned them here." His voice broke and monitors screamed as his heart gave out. Leaving only the echo of his words in the silent room, the world held its breath and the desert giant raised its head toward the horizon, its burning eye staring across oceans toward the United States. The world was no longer the same after the desert giant opened its eye across every television screen in America. A live broadcast began with shaky cameras capturing the colossal machine standing tall in the Sahara, its size beyond human imagination, its body stretching higher than the tallest mountains, its armor glowing like rivers of fire. News anchors could not hide their fear. Their voices broke as they described the ground collapsing for miles, entire towns vanishing under waves of sand. The machine raised one arm toward the sky, and with a sound like thunder cracking across the heavens, it released a roar that shook continents, buildings, trembled in Europe, windows shattered across Africa, and seismographs around the world recorded the sound as if the earth itself was screaming for the first time in history. Every nation realized they were powerless. The United Nations called an emergency session. Leaders argued endlessly, some demanded immediate nuclear strikes, others shouted that weapons would only anger the giants. Scientists begged them to listen. They revealed their latest discovery. The war gods were not just weapons, they were judges. Their awakening was not random. Each time humanity reached a threshold of destruction, pollution wore endless bloodshed. The giants stirred from their slumber to measure whether mankind was worthy to continue. This era had gone too far. Too many wars, too much damage to the planet. The machines had opened their eyes to deliver judgment. Chaos filled the chamber. Leaders shouted threats. Alliances broke. Live feeds showed riots in cities across America. People emptied stores, highways jammed, churches overflowed with terrified citizens, while governments scrambled to maintain control. Inside a secret U.S. facility, scientists and engineers worked on the Nevada discovery. The Sentinel, they uncovered old blueprints, ancient circuits fused with designs no modern human could replicate. The Sentinel was not just a machine. It had once been alive. They found traces of organic cells woven into its structure, a living mind trapped in metal. It had memory and fear and pain. They realized the Sentinel was not simply a weapon. It was a soldier that remembered the last war, but to bring it back required power beyond anything humanity had. They connected reactors, entire city grids drained to feed the slumbering husk, deep under Alaskan ice, as engineers worked. News from the Sahara worsened the war. God moved east, each step sent shockwaves that cracked highways, split rivers, and swallowed villages. Drones sent to capture images showed its glowing chest pulsing like a reactor, each pulse stronger than the last one. Analysts whispered, "It is charging something larger than a nuclear blast. If it reaches a major city, the world ends." Governments debated again, should they fire nuclear warheads, but the generals hesitated. What if the strike only woke more? What if every sleeping god rose together still? The pressure grew when a strange signal interrupted all global broadcasts. Screens flickered everywhere, phones, televisions, giant monitors in New York Times Square, each filled with a single glowing symbol, an eye of burning red, and then a sound filled every speaker. A voice, not. In any language known yet understood by all, it said, "You were given time. You wasted it. Now you will burn." People screamed, some collapsed in the streets. Scientists scrambled to decode the phenomenon. Was it telepathy? Was it a frequency? But deep in their hearts, everyone knew it was the voice of the war gods. The Sahara giant continued to move its glowing eye, locking on New York satellites, confirmed its course. If nothing stopped it, within days it would arrive. Panic spread through America. Mass evacuations began, highways clogged with endless cars, families crying as they tried to flee, but there was no real place to run. Nowhere was safe as leaders prepared desperate plans. The Alaskan facility at last reported progress. The Sentinel. Stirred, faint energy lines ran through its body. Engineers shouted in excitement. But the moment the light spread, its metal chest shuddered, and a sound unlike machinery filled the chamber. It screamed a scream like a wounded human echoing through. Steel halls, every soldier froze, some covered their ears. Scientists stood in shock. The Sentinel was alive, and it was afraid. It whispered words in a broken voice. You were not meant to wake them again. You are not ready yet. Generals demanded it be. Forced into battle, but the Sentinel resisted. It remembered pain. It remembered fire. It remembered the last time it faced the war gods and how close it came to dying. The scientists argued, but military pressure won. They forced more energy into its body chains, released as the giant weapon rose to its knees, then stood, its eyes glowing not with fire, but with sadness. They ordered it to prepare for battle. The war god was already across the Mediterranean, its colossal shadow blacking out the sea. People screamed in terror as they saw it rise, taller than clouds, its eye burning brighter than the sun. But still the Sentinel hesitated, as if it knew the truth. Humans could not yet understand when the live feed from the Sahara cut to black. The world realized. The war god was turning its gaze across the ocean, its burning eye focusing straight on New York, deep beneath the Alaskan ice. The Sentinel finally stood, its colossal frame filling the hidden chamber. The walls of steel groaned. Under its weight, soldiers cheered, believing hope had returned, but the machine did not move with pride. It trembled as though remembering old scars. Its voice echoed across the room, not mechanical, but broken, human-like, whispering again and again. You are not ready. You were not meant to wake them. But the generals ignored the warning. They poured more energy into its veins. Its chest lit with violent blue light, and its metallic limbs shook with each surge. The scientists watched in terror. The Sentinel was alive, and forcing it caused pain. Still, orders were orders. The world outside had no time left. The war. God in the Sahara was moving north, its colossal footsteps tearing the land apart. Every step created earthquakes. Rivers shifted. Mountains cracked. Drones showed the giant dragging a spear carved of molten stone, glowing red as if born from the Earth's own core. The world stared through their screens as the monster crossed the Mediterranean, its shadow swallowing entire fleets without effort. When it stepped onto the sea, the water boiled from the heat of its body. The president demanded immediate deployment. The Sentinel was dragged from its tomb, hauled to a launch site surrounded by nuclear bombers and warships. A massive gate opened to reveal the night sky. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the Sentinel looked upon the world again. Its eyes glowed faint blue, filled not with rage but sorrow. It spoke once more, a final warning. I cannot fight. Them alone, I cannot win without the key. No one understood the words. No one asked what the key was. They only ordered the advance moments later. The Sentinel was flown across the Atlantic, escorted by jets, fleets gathered behind it, the largest concentration of human firepower ever assembled. Billions of eyes across the globe watched as humanity's ancient guardian approached the awakened god. The clash began with a roar so loud, the ocean itself split waves higher than skyscrapers, crushed ships like toys, as the sentinel slammed its fist against the god's burning chest. The sound rang like thunder across continents. The Sahara giant staggered back, but then raised its spear and struck a blow that lit the sky brighter than any weapon mankind had ever unleashed. The sentinel screamed a cry of agony as the spear pierced through its armor sparks, and blue fire rained into the sea. The world watched breathless, the first battle between gods and man, and in that moment, hope began to die. The sentinel struggled, its movements slow, its energy unstable. Soldiers shouted commands, firing missiles. Nuclear warheads detonated across the battlefield. But when the smoke cleared, the war god still stood, its armor glowing brighter as if feeding. From the blasts, instead of weakening it, the sentinel tried again, raising its arm to strike. But the wound in its chest grew larger. It faltered, its massive body crashing into the ocean, sending a wave that drowned entire coastlines. People screamed. Across New York, across London, across the world, scientists in control rooms saw the readings and cried. The sentinel was failing. It was not strong enough. It had been awakened too soon. It needed something. It had asked for something, a key. And without it, there was no hope. The generals demanded it rise again. But the sentinel collapsed, its voice whispering faintly into the comms. "I warned you, I cannot hold them alone." Silence followed. Then chaos erupted as another signal struck the Earth seismographs. Around the world, recorded quakes far greater than before. News came from Antarctica. Ice shelves, miles thick, cracking open like glass. A second war god rising from the white wasteland. Its colossal body pulling itself free. The roar that followed froze every human heart across the globe. Two giants now awake, and the sentinel broken. The world was collapsing. The Pentagon filled with silence. Men and women who once shouted orders sat frozen watching the feeds. One whispered, "What if there are more?" Another answered, "There are. We counted at least 7 locations." When the legend said the world will burn, it did not speak in metaphor. Panic struck the world harder than ever before. Cities emptied, planes filled, seas clogged with ships. People tried to flee, but there was nowhere left to go. 2 gods awake, 1 guardian broken, and others still stirring under the ground. As the Antarctic beast rose, its burning eyes opened across the frozen sky. A crimson light sweeping across the world like a signal, a call, the beginning of the true awakening. All across the earth, the sky shook with fear. 2 war gods had awakened, and their roars echoed like the cracking of the planet itself. Cities fell into chaos. Governments collapsed into silence. No one could give orders when the screens showed giants. Rising higher than mountains, every human being understood the truth. Humanity was prey. The sentinel lay broken in the Atlantic, its chest cracked wide, leaking streams of blue fire. Its head bowed into the waves as if in shame, fleets scattered around. It tried to pull the massive body back to safety, but every attempt failed. The war god from the Sahara marched onward, its burning eye locked firmly on New York, while the one from Antarctica rose out of the ice, its shadow stretching for miles, its scream turning glaciers to dust. The world prayed, but prayers could not stop titans. One voice, however, rose in the chaos, a child's voice, small yet clear. She was no soldier, no leader, only a girl among the millions fleeing from the burning coasts. Yet when she cried out, the words came not in English, not in any language known, but in the same ancient chant carved into the tablets hidden in Nevada. The scientists watching froze their screens, detected energy fluctuations not from the war gods, but from the sentinel itself. Its broken frame stirred as though answering her call. Soldiers near the wreckage shouted in disbelief. The giant was moving again, only faintly, but enough the girl's voice carried across emergency radios, somehow amplified through static, as if the world itself wanted her to be heard. The sentinel's head lifted water cascading off its broken crown. Its glowing eyes flickered faintly, and then focused on the voice across every frequency. A message crackled. The sentinel spoke not to generals, not to scientists, but to the child alone. I know you. Your blood remembers me. Stunned, experts rushed to analyze the girl. Her DNA held something strange, a rare sequence hidden, deep something passed down through generations. The truth struck hard. She was a descendant of those first humans who once fought beside the Sentinel. 12,000 years ago, she was the key it had spoken of. The generals wanted to seize her, use her as a weapon. But the Sentinel's voice thundered through comms. If you harm her, I will not rise again. The world had no choice. They brought the girl to the giant weapon, and when she stood before its colossal chest, she placed her tiny hand upon the glowing wound and whispered the chant again. Blue light spread across the armor like veins awakening once more. The sentinel rose slowly, the ocean boiling around it, its cracked body mending with streams of light. The roar that followed was not pain, but fury. Its eyes burned bright, and for the first time in days, humanity felt something close to hope. Yet even hope trembled when the skies themselves began to split above the war. God's crimson portals tore through the clouds as if the heavens were being cut open. Lightning poured from the rifts, and shadows moved inside shapes larger than the war gods themselves, beings of fire and darkness looming just beyond the veil. The scientists screamed in panic. This was worse than anyone had imagined. The war gods were not acting alone. They were heralds opening the way for something far greater. The Sahara giant raised its arms to the portal, and the Antarctic Titan echoed the motion together. They were summoning their creators. The sentinel looked to the child, its voice softer, almost like a prayer. They are calling them the true masters. If they arrive, this world will end. The girl trembled but did not run. She shouted that humanity was not finished. Yet she begged the sentinel to fight with her, not for the generals, not for the governments, but for the people. The families fleeing, the children crying in the streets. The sentinel's chest pulsed with light, its massive frame shaking as if her courage filled its hollow heart. The fleets regrouped behind it, the world united at last across. Nations' enemies laid down weapons and turned all ships, all guns toward the war gods. The largest human armada ever built gathered under the sentinel's shadow, preparing for the impossible battle. The war gods raised their arms again, their eyes burning brighter than suns, the portals widening, thunder rolling across every landmass. And at that moment, the girl's voice carried again across every frequency, louder, stronger than ever before, an ancient command that even the war gods recognized. They paused for a fraction of a second, their colossal frames trembling as if resisting the word. The sentinel seized the chance, launching forward across the waves, its colossal fist colliding with the chest of the Sahara giant. Blue fire against red flame, the sky lit brighter than day. The world held its breath as titans clashed. But in the burning heavens, the portals continued to expand, shadows moving closer. The true masters were coming, and the final judgment of Earth had only just begun. Sky split open like torn fabric, and the world stared in horror as the portals widened above the oceans, crimson light spilling across every horizon from within. The rift's shadows of unimaginable size moved, wings of fire stretching across the heavens. Eyes like suns burning with hunger, the creators of the war gods had come to witness the end of humanity. Their voices rolled like storms across the earth, not words but judgment, a sound so vast it shook mountains and made oceans quake. The war gods on earth raised their arms in praise, as if welcoming their masters. The Sahara giant and the Antarctic Titan turned their burning eyes upward, glowing brighter in worship. Their summoning nearly complete, the sentinel stood in defiance, its colossal frame cracked and scorched, yet burning with new light, guided by the voice of the child who stood before it. Her chant carried across every channel louder than ever, defying the sound of doom. Her words struck the sentinel like fire in its veins. Its armor flared with brilliant blue energy brighter than before. The child shouted, "We will not surrender! We will not kneel!" The sentinel raised its arms, and its roar joined her voice, a defiant cry that shook the portals themselves. The masters turned their eyes down upon earth, and the sky thundered. The final battle had begun. Fleets of every nation surged forward. Missiles lit the night. Nuclear fire rained upon the Titans for once. Not against each other, but together, humanity had united. The oceans boiled as the war gods waded through destruction, their weapons swinging with earth-shattering force. The Sahara giant's molten spear cut through carriers like paper. The Antarctic beast's fists smashed destroyers into dust. Yet still, humans fought side by side, refusing to yield. The sentinel hurled itself into the fray, its massive hand gripping the spear of the desert god, tearing it free and slamming it back into the monster's chest. The impact ripped the air apart. Lightning cracked across the sky as the giant staggered, but the Antarctic god struck the sentinel from behind, piercing its back with a burning claw. The scream that followed tore across continents. The child cried out, and her voice once more reached the wounded guardian. Her chant wrapped around it like chains, pulling the sentinel back to its feet, stronger, faster, alive, as if the child's soul had become one with it. Its eyes burned brighter than the stars as it turned on both war gods at once. Fists glowing with fury, blue light clashed with red flame, the world shook under their war cities, fell oceans, boiled skies cracked open, but humanity did not look away. They fought in every corner, desperate and unbroken. The masters above the portals began to descend, colossal forms pressing closer, their shadows blacking out the heavens. The sentinel looked up, and in its voice came sorrow. They are not yet here. This was only their gaze. If they fully cross, no power on this world will survive. The child trembled. She understood what it meant. The sentinel was not enough. Not even with her voice. Not even with all humanity, the masters were too great. There was only one choice. She looked up, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "Then take me the..." Sentinel froze, its glowing eyes dimming in protest. "No," it said, "you are the last key. Without you, I fall." She shook her head, her voice breaking but stronger than fear. "You will not fall. You will rise." She began chanting again, louder than ever, her small body glowing as the light of the sentinel wrapped around her. Scientists watching screamed as readings spiked beyond measure. Her life force merging into the machine, her very soul becoming its heart. The sentinel roared as its frame split apart, then reformed. Larger, stronger wings of light unfurled from its back. Its body no longer cracked but reborn as something beyond metal, beyond flesh. It was a god of humanity forged from sacrifice. It turned to the war gods, its eyes blinding blue, and struck with a force that shattered the Sahara giant into molten fragments. The Antarctic titan bellowed, but the sentinel's new form tore it down, ripping its burning heart free, casting it into the ocean in a blast that boiled seas for hundreds of miles. The people of Earth screamed in triumph and terror as both giants fell. Silence followed for one breath of hope. Then the portals shook again. The masters watching did not retreat. They leaned closer, shadows stretching across Earth, their fire eyes unblinking. The sentinel stood beneath them, victorious yet trembling. It raised its head and spoke its voice not only to the generals, not only to the scientists, but to every human being alive. This was a test, only a test. If you had broken, you would already be ash today. You endure tomorrow the true war. Gods will open their eyes and the world will burn. Humanity listened in silence, knowing the battle had been won, but the war had only just begun.